Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving into a topic that shapes our world in ways we might not even realize: the US-led international order. Have you ever wondered how global politics came to be structured the way it is? Well, you're in the right place. Let's take a trip back in time. The US-led international order was largely established after World War II, a time when the world was recovering from unprecedented devastation. Many countries were in ruins, economies were shattered, and there was a strong desire to prevent such conflict from ever happening again. The US emerged from the war as one of the two superpowers, alongside the Soviet Union. Unlike the USSR, which sought to expand communism, the US had a vision for a different world, one built on capitalism and international cooperation. Let's mention some key events during this period. The Bretton Woods Conference, 1944. This conference set up the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank, establishing economic rules to promote stability and prevent the kind of economic chaos that had led to the Great Depression. The United Nations, 1945, created to foster international dialogue and cooperation. The UN aimed to ensure peace and security worldwide. NATO, 1949. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization was formed as a military alliance to counter Soviet influence and ensure collective defense among its members. Through these institutions and alliances, the U.S. aimed to create a stable international system where countries would cooperate to address common challenges rather than resorting to conflict. Now that we have some historical context, let's discuss the key principles that underpin this order. Liberal democracy. At the heart of the US-led order is the promotion of liberal democracy. The idea is that democratic nations are less likely to go to war with each other, which is often referred to as the democratic peace theory. Free market economics. Another pillar is free market capitalism. The US advocates for open trade and investment, believing that economic interdependence reduces the likelihood of conflict. By encouraging countries to engage in commerce, the idea is that they'll have a vested interest in maintaining peaceful relations. This has led to the establishment of numerous trade agreements and economic partnerships that aim to facilitate free trade and economic growth. International institutions. As we mentioned earlier, the establishment of international institutions like the UN, NATO, the IMF, and the World Bank has been crucial. These organizations provide frameworks for cooperation, conflict resolution, and economic support, helping to maintain global stability. The U.S. has often taken a leadership role in these institutions, pushing for reforms and policies that align with its values and interests. Collective security. The principle of collective security is also essential to the US-led order. This means that an attack on one member of a collective group, like NATO, is viewed as an attack on all. This deters potential aggressors, knowing that they would face a unified response. The commitment to mutual defense has been a cornerstone of the transatlantic alliance, ensuring that member nations stand together in times of crisis. To fully appreciate the US-led order, it's helpful to contrast it with previous global leadership models. Historically, world powers have exerted influence through conquest, colonization, and dominance, often prioritizing their interests at the expense of others. For instance, during the age of colonialism, European powers established empires by subjugating local populations and exploiting resources. The focus was on extraction rather than collaboration. In contrast, the US-led order seeks to promote cooperation and mutual benefit, albeit with mixed results. Here are some key differences. Focus on institutions. Previous models often relied on unilateral actions, whereas the US-led order emphasizes multilateralism and the role of international institutions. This approach aims to provide a platform for dialogue and conflict resolution. Promotion of values. The US has championed values like democracy, human rights, and free markets. While not always consistently applied, looking at certain alliances and interventions, the rhetoric surrounding these values contrasts sharply with past leadership models that were often based on power and control. Economic interdependence. Unlike colonial powers that extracted wealth from colonies, the US-led order promotes economic interdependence through trade and investment, aiming to create win-win scenarios. However, This has also led to criticisms of economic imperialism, where wealthier nations still exploit the resources of poorer countries. So, how does this system actually function in our modern world? Let's break it down. Global governance. The U.S. leads in shaping global governance through its influence in institutions like the United Nations. Although the UN has its flaws, it provides a platform for dialogue, negotiation, and addressing issues like climate change, human rights, and international security. The U.S. plays a critical role in funding the UN and other international organizations, which amplifies its influence. Economic influence. The U.S. dollar serves as the world's primary reserve currency, which gives the U.S. significant economic leverage. Countries around the world rely on the dollar for international trade, making U.S. economic policies influential on a global scale. The U.S. can impose economic sanctions, which are powerful tools for achieving foreign policy objectives. These sanctions can be seen as both a blessing and a curse, as they can effectively deter aggression, but also have negative consequences for civilian populations. Military power. The U.S. maintains a strong military presence worldwide, with bases in various countries. This military capability serves not only as a deterrent to potential aggressors, but also enables the U.S. to respond to crises and support allies. However, the reliance on military power has drawn criticism, especially regarding interventions in countries like Iraq and Afghanistan, which have led to complex geopolitical ramifications. Soft power. Soft power is the ability to influence others through attraction rather than coercion. The U.S. promotes its culture, values, and ideals through media, education, and diplomacy. Hollywood movies, American music, and technology companies all contribute to a positive image that many countries aspire to emulate. Yet this cultural dominance can also lead to accusations of cultural imperialism, where local traditions and identities may be overshadowed by American influence. Like any system, the U.S.-led order has its advantages and disadvantages. Let's take a closer look at the advantages. Stability and peace. The U.S.-led order has contributed to a relatively stable international system since World War II, preventing major conflicts between great powers for decades. Economic growth. By promoting free trade and investment, the U.S. has helped foster economic growth in many countries. Technological and scientific advancement. The collaboration fostered by the U.S.-led order has led to significant advancements in technology and science, benefiting humanity as a whole. Now let's take a closer look at the disadvantages. Inequality. Critics argue that the U.S.-led order disproportionately benefits wealthier nations, leaving poorer countries behind. The economic system can perpetuate existing inequalities, making it difficult for developing nations to compete on the global stage. Interventionism. The U.S. has a history of military interventions that have sometimes resulted in unintended consequences, destabilizing regions and causing humanitarian crises. Crisis of legitimacy. As global power dynamics shift, some argue that the U.S.-led order is losing its legitimacy. The rise of authoritarian regimes and the questioning of Western values present challenges to the system. Rise of authoritarianism. Countries like China and Russia have adopted authoritarian models that challenge the liberal democratic norms promoted by the U.S. China, in particular, is expanding its influence through initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative, seeking to reshape global economic and political dynamics. Populism and nationalism. In many Western countries, there's been a rise in populist and nationalist sentiments, leading to skepticism about international institutions and agreements. This backlash can undermine the collaborative spirit that underpins the U.S.-led order. Global issues. Climate change, pandemics, and transnational terrorism are challenges that require collective action, yet the response has often been fragmented and inadequate. Looking ahead, the future of the U.S.-led order is uncertain. Will it adapt to the changing geopolitical landscape, or will emerging powers reshape the global system entirely? While challenges abound, the principles of cooperation, democracy, and economic interdependence remain relevant. As the world becomes increasingly interconnected, finding ways to collaborate on global issues will be crucial for maintaining stability. And there you have it, the U.S.-led order, its historical roots, key principles, and functioning in today's world. It's a complex system that has shaped global politics for decades, and as we move forward, Understanding its dynamics will be essential for navigating the future. Thanks for tuning in. That's it for today. Take care.